My name is Adrian Vale. I was 27 when my wife called me gutter trash in a room full of billionaires. Crystal glasses paused midair. No one laughed. They just watched. My wife leaned back in her chair, smiling like she had just said something clever. Her father, Richard Hallstrom, chuckled softly and raised his glass. That's my girl. 20 guests, investors, board members, people who controlled entire markets with a phone call. And me, sitting at the far end of the table like I didn't belong. Maybe I didn't, but not for the reason they thought. I wiped my mouth slowly with the napkin, set it down, stood up. Chairs creaked around me. Eyes followed. I leaned slightly toward her, close enough that only she could hear. Enjoy your dinner. Her smile flickered, just for a second. Then I straightened and walked away. No shouting, no scene, just silence. Behind me, someone muttered something about security. Someone else laughed, but I kept walking. Out of the dining hall, past the marble hallway, into the cold night air. My phone vibrated in my pocket. I already knew who it was. I didn't answer. Instead, I opened another app, logged in, watched as numbers started to move, because while they were still eating, I had already started taking everything from them. I didn't leave the property. Not yet. I stood across the street, watching the glass walls of that dining hall. Gold light, expensive laughter, controlled power. My phone buzzed again. Ava, I ignored it. Opened the dashboard instead. Clean interface, black background, white numbers, simple, deadly. I had built it 3 years ago, quietly, while sitting at tables just like that one, listening, learning, waiting. Every deal Richard Hallstrom bragged about, I was the one who structured half of them, not as his employee, as the ghost behind the system. A shell company here, a routing layer there, minor optimizations, they called it. They never looked deeper. Why would they? To them, I was just the guy who married above his weight, the lucky one, the gutter trash who somehow got a seat at the table. My phone buzzed again. This time, Richard. I smiled slightly, still didn't answer. Instead, I tapped a single file. Hallstrom Group, dependency map. It opened like a spider web, every subsidiary, every offshore account, every silent partner, and at the center of it all, a structure only I fully understood. I tapped another button, paused, just for a second, then pressed it. Back inside, through the glass, I saw movement, confusion, phones being pulled out, heads turning, and then Richard Hallstrom stood up. For the first time that night, he didn't look in control. I let it run for exactly 90 seconds. No more, no less. Then I paused the system, not stopped, paused. Like holding someone underwater just long enough to remind them they can drown. My phone finally rang again. This time, I answered. Adrian, Richard's voice came through, tight. What did you just do? I leaned against the cold railing outside. Enjoying dinner? I asked. Silence. Then, lower. You need to fix this. Now. Inside, I could see him pacing. Guests standing, assistants whispering. Perfect. I didn't break anything, I said calmly. I just adjusted visibility. You think this is funny? He snapped. No, I replied. I think it's overdue. A pause, longer this time. You're overstepping, he said. Whatever you think you've built, it belongs to us. I smiled. There it was, the belief, the ownership. You still think I work for you, I said quietly. You married into this family, he shot back. Don't forget your place. My eyes drifted to the window. Ava was standing now, looking around, trying to understand. You taught her well, I said. Don't bring her into this. She already did that, I replied. Silence again, sharp, dangerous. Then I straightened slightly. No more pauses, I said. And this time, I didn't stop the system. I let it run. By the time I crossed the street, security was already at the doors. Not to keep me out, to keep people from leaving. Bad optics. Panic spreads faster in public. I walked past them anyway. No one stopped me. Inside, the room felt different. Not loud anymore. Tight. Phones in hands. Voices low. Richard stood near the center, surrounded by men who suddenly needed answers. Ava saw me first. She stepped forward, heels sharp against marble. "What did you do?" she demanded. No smile now. No performance. Just fear hiding behind anger. I looked at her for a second. Really looked. "I stood up," I said. "That's it." "Not exactly." Richard moved closer, close enough to take control again. "Adrian," he said, forcing calm. "We can fix whatever misunderstanding this is." "Misunderstanding?" I echoed. He lowered his voice. "Whatever leverage you think you have, use it wisely." There it was again. Threat wrapped in politeness. I pulled out my phone, turned the screen toward them. Live data. Accounts freezing. Transactions reversing. Liquidity draining like a slow leak. Ava's face changed first, then his. "This isn't possible," she whispered. "It is," I said. Richard stepped closer. "You're committing fraud." I shook my head slightly. "No," I said. "I'm revealing it." The room went still. Every eye on us now. 20 people who thought they were untouchable. Watching the moment it all started to crack. And for the first time that night, they weren't looking at me like I didn't belong. They were looking at me like I shouldn't exist. No one touched their food anymore. Crystal sat untouched. Money hates uncertainty. And I had just introduced a lot of it. Ava stepped closer, lowering her voice. "Stop this," she said. "You're embarrassing yourself." I almost laughed. "Embarrassing?" I repeated. "That's what you think this is?" Her jaw tightened. "You're acting like you built something," she said. "You didn't. My father did." I turned the phone toward her again, highlighted a single layer in the structure, a routing system, my system. "Who do you think designed the capital flow between your father's offshore holdings?" I asked quietly. She didn't answer, didn't need to, because she didn't know. None of them did. Richard stepped in again. "This ends now," he said. "You've made your point." I shook my head. "I haven't even started." His expression shifted. Not anger, not yet. Something else. Calculation. "Tell me what you want," he said. There it was. The moment power changes direction. "I want the truth," I said. He narrowed his eyes. "You already have your version." "No," I replied calmly. "I want everyone else to hear it." Murmurs spread across the room. Investors leaning closer, board members whispering. Because secrets only hold value until someone decides to make them public. I looked directly at Richard, or I let the system keep running. Silence. Heavy. Final. And then I added, "Your choice." Richard didn't answer right away. He looked around the room, not at me, at them, the investors, the men who had trusted him with numbers too big to say out loud. That's who he was protecting now, not his daughter, not his name, his control. Ava stepped closer to him. "Dad, just say something," she whispered. He raised a hand slightly, silencing her. Then finally, he looked at me. "What exactly do you think you know?" he asked. Calm again, trying to reset the board. I didn't respond with words. I tapped the screen and projected it. The main display at the end of the room flickered, then changed. Numbers disappeared. Charts replaced them. Transactions. Dates. Transfers routed through 5 different countries. Clean. Invisible. Until now. The room shifted again. Someone cursed under their breath. One of the older investors stood up. "Richard, what is this?" No answer. Of course not. Because the truth doesn't sound powerful when it's exposed. It sounds small. Ava looked at the screen, then at me, confused, lost. "You're lying," she said. I shook my head. "No," I replied. I built the system that hides it. That landed. Hard. Richard's jaw tightened. You're destroying your own future, he said quietly. I stepped closer. No, I said. I'm correcting it. Silence fell again. But this time, it wasn't confusion. It was fear, because they were starting to understand. This wasn't revenge. This was removal. No one sat down again. Not after that. The room had shifted from dinner to damage control. Phones were out, lawyers on speed dial, assistants whispering into corners, but no one left. Because leaving meant admitting something was wrong, and these people didn't admit weakness. They buried it. Richard stepped away from the group and walked toward me. Slower this time. Measured. You think exposing this makes you clean? He said quietly. I didn't move. I was never part of what you built, I replied. You married into it, he snapped. You benefited from it. I nodded once, and I learned exactly how it works. That hit him. Ava stood behind him now, silent, watching both of us like she didn't know which version of her life was real. Richard lowered his voice further. What do you want, Adrian? Not aggressive anymore, not arrogant, just direct. I looked around the room, at the men who once ignored me, at the ones who laughed, at the ones who believed I didn't belong. I want this structure dismantled, I said. Murmurs again, louder this time. You don't get to decide that, one of them said. I turned slightly. No, I replied, but the evidence does. I lifted my phone. Full release goes out in 10 minutes. That landed harder than anything else, because now, it wasn't a threat. It was a countdown. No one spoke for a few seconds. 10 minutes suddenly felt very short. Richard looked at the screen again, then at the people around him. For the first time, he wasn't the one leading. He was reacting. Shut it down, he said quietly. Not to me, to his team. But no one moved, because they knew this wasn't something you could just shut down. Ava stepped forward again, closer to me this time. You're serious, she said. I met her eyes. For the first time tonight. Her voice dropped. If you do this, it destroys everything. I nodded. That's the point. Silence stretched. Then one of the investors spoke. What happens if he releases it? No one answered, because everyone already knew. Investigations, audits, frozen assets, public exposure. Not just Richard, all of them. Years of control, gone. Richard finally exhaled, slow, defeated. What do you want in return? He asked. I didn't hesitate. Full internal confession, I said. Signed, recorded, delivered to every partner in this room. Murmurs again, louder now. You're finished if this goes public, he said. I looked at him calmly. I already was, I replied. That ended it. He nodded once, small, heavy. The system stopped. The room breathed again. But something had changed. Not the power, the illusion of it. Because that night, they didn't lose everything. They just lost the one thing that made it work. Control.